So hello and welcome. In this video, we will be having some review of the coagulation system, and also we will be talking about some tests, some coagulation tests, some platelet function tests, which will tell us whether the defect lies in the platelet or in the coagulation pathway or in the clotting pathway. So this is a live session from Chambers, and let me share the screen. I have also some students joining with me. You can contribute and ask questions. So let us begin. So I want to first have a small review so that we can easily learn. If I tell you that in what steps, as we have learned in our previous lectures of clotting and clotting cascade pathways, isn't it? So what basically is basically happening if I want to summarize things, if I want to have a quick summary of what is happening if I have, for example, this is a small vessel. I take a small vessel, okay? This is a small vessel and it has got an injury. There is now a discontinuity in the membrane of this vessel. So what is happening if this is a small vessel, for example, this is a small vessel and I have an injury here. So what will happen first is, I will be having my system, my body homeostasis will be such that it will start some phases. It will start some phases. So what phases? For example, first phase will be the vascular phase. Why homeostasis? It is the homeostasis which is actually doing the hemostasis. So homeostasis is actually doing the hemostasis to get the body into homeostasis, isn't it? So homeostasis is actually doing hemostasis to bring the body into homeostasis. So what I am doing, what the body is doing is it is undergoing through some phases to bring this vessel to prevent the minimum loss of blood. No, to prevent the maximum loss of blood actually. Okay. So vascular phase will start first. If I give a broad heading for a vascular phase, then after that there will be what phase? A platelet phase, isn't it? There will be a platelet phase. We can discuss this topic in many dimensions, but right now I have tried to make it what? A concise way to to have a rapid review of what is this happening at this level. So vascular phase, then a platelet phase will come. After this platelet phase, a coagulation, a short phase of coagulation will start. Okay, a coagulation phase will start. A coagulation phase will start, and after this coagulation phase, I will be having the next phase. So we said hemostasis is not only that I am making the thrombus, but also I should have a fibrinolytic system. I should have a fibrinolytic system so that I can dissolve that thrombus, so that I can re-establish that blood flow. The blood flow which was restrained from that site, now I should have a normal blood flow through it, isn't it? I should have a normal blood through it. So for that purpose, I will be having a fibrinolytic system to have a nice streamlined flow of my blood. To have a nice streamlined flow of my blood. I don't want the blood to be like having a turbulence, because if the blood is having turbulence, then it will be rupturing the blood vessels. Normally you have a streamlined flow of the blood. All waveforms, all the waves are in one phase, isn't it? They are all in the one phase. They're moving in this straight line. A streamlined flow is there. A perfect Reynolds number is there. You know the Reynolds number, isn't it? So a perfect Reynolds number is maintained in order to have a streamlined flow. But once you face any turbulence, for example, you have something in your way, and you will, once you collide with it, there will be turbulence. There will be turbulence, and this turbulence makes the blood vessels susceptible to injury. It makes the blood vessels susceptible to injury. So I have a fibrinolytic phase to prevent that, to resolve that thrombus. Okay, so in the vascular phase, what can I write? What are the stages? First, an injury is happening. That injury, the injury which happens leads to the what? Thromboplastin activation, isn't it? There will be thromboplastin activation. So this thromboplastin activation will start a coagulation cascade. It will start a coagulation cascade. That means now there will be a platelet phase. Now this will go into the platelet phase. What is happening in the platelet phase? There will be first adhesion to von Willebrand factor. Second thing, there will be release of ADP. there will be release of ADP. Third thing, there will be more synthesis of thromboxane A2. I want to have more thromboxane A2 so that I can form platelet plugs, platelet temporary plugs. So I will form a temporary platelet plug. I will form a temporary platelet plug. Then I will enter the coagulation phase where I will be having a stabilization of platelet thrombus. So a stabilization phase, this was a temporary, now this is a stabilization. Coagulation phase is a stabilization phase where you will have a stable platelet thrombus formation. So you have actually formed a stable platelet plug now. You have formed a stable platelet plug now. This stable platelet plug, this stable platelet thrombus has to be dissolved because now the hemostasis has happened, the blood loss has been prevented. So right now I will be going through the fibrinolytic phase. So what is the fibrinolytic phase? Okay, let us write the fibrinolytic phase. So in the fibrinolytic phase, I will be having a dissolution. I will dissolve. I will be having a dissolution of thrombus. I will be having a dissolution of thrombus. Once I am dissolving the thrombus, that means the blood will nicely flow through that area, isn't it? And we discussed in our previous lectures also, if we have a defect in von Willebrand factor, we say it is a von Willebrand disease. We say it is a von Willebrand disease. If we have to stop the synthesis as being if we are in the medicine, if we want to prevent the synthesis of thromboxane A2, we will give a cyclooxygenase inhibitor, and that is aspirin. So here I am giving aspirin. I am giving aspirin. And if I can't form a temporary platelet thrombus, that means I have Glanzmann's thrombasthenia. I have Glanzmann's thrombasthenia. We said defective platelet thrombus formation happens in Glanzmann's disease, isn't it? And if I'm not able to form, if I'm not able to stabilize a platelet plug, I will say I have factor deficiencies, isn't it? I will say I will have factor deficiencies. That's why I'm not able to stabilize the platelet thrombus, isn't it? So we are clear with that thing. Okay. Let me bring your attention towards now a very nice medically important topic which we are every day doing in our clinical life in the hospitals. That is some platelet tests. So now topic starts for platelet tests. For platelet test, you must think first that whenever I'm seeing a blood test report, I will be encountering first with a platelet count, isn't it? Normally, you know about that platelet count. How much is that? It's around 2 lakhs to 4, I think 2 lakhs to 4 lakh cells, isn't it? So 2 lakhs, I think 2 lakhs to 4 lakhs, isn't it? Or 1.5 you can say, okay? So 2 lakhs to like this cells, okay? And if you take them under a unit, you can use mm³ right now, okay? So this is your normal platelet count. So your platelet tests, what are your platelet tests? So platelet test includes what is present in a platelet. If you want to give a heading of platelet test, then you should know it is platelet count, number 1. Second is BT. BT means bleeding time. Then we have platelet aggregation tests. We have platelet aggregation tests. Now tell me, is aggregation an anatomical function or something like a functional thing, isn't it? Is it an anatomical or something functional? Aggregation is happening, then it's a functional test. So we should say it is a functional test. It is a functional test. Okay. And I can include also that von Willebrand factor test also. So tests for von Willebrand factor that can also be put in the platelet test. So let us jot down some important points, some important concepts. So let me tell you first about the platelet count. So we already said we have a platelet count of around 1.5 to 4.5, isn't it? But for example, I am having this normal count. Do you think that there will be also a nice platelet function? No, it's not. It can't be, because for example, this can happen in case of I am taking a drug. For example, I am taking a cyclooxygenase inhibitor. Okay, I take a cyclooxygenase inhibitor. For example, I am taking aspirin. Now I am taking aspirin, and what is aspirin doing? What is aspirin doing? Yes, contribute. Aspirin is, it is not allowing the synthesis of thromboxane A2. That means it is not allowing the, to start the process of temporary platelet thrombus formation, isn't it? It is not allowing that. So I have a normal count, but my function is getting affected at that molecular level. My platelets are not functioning, isn't it? So can I say, even if I have a normal platelet count, but the functional ability of the platelet has been compromised, the functional ability of the platelet has been compromised, no matter how much platelets you give to that person, but you are not letting them to aggregate. You are not letting the thromboxane A2 to get synthesized. How is it possible that you will have a nice platelet function? So your platelets will not function. And if your platelets will not function, that means you are not able to stop the bleeding. So we should remember this thing in our clinical practice, that even in case of a normal platelet count, we should also know that a functional ability of the platelet can be compromised at that molecular level. So remember, it is not 100% guarantee that if you have a normal platelet count, you would be having a nice hemostasis. No. Understood? So if I talk about BT, what is BT? BT means bleeding time. This is actually the test which will tell me about the functional capacity. It will tell me how the platelet is functioning. So till it is forming that temporary platelet thrombus which we said, till it is forming a platelet is forming a temporary platelet thrombus, till that time this bleeding time will tell me. So this is the time which is between between the injury and the time till the temporary platelet thrombus is formed. So it will tell me the platelet function till the time your temporary platelet thrombus is formed. So you have to remember its normal value. What is the normal BT? The normal BT is equal to 1 to 9 minutes. Your normal BT is 1 to 9 minutes. Okay. But nowadays we are using an assay that is PFA. What is PFA? PFA is platelet function assay. Platelet function assay. So in platelet function assay, it's actually written as PFA 100. Okay, PFA 100. What we are doing in this is, it is basically a, it's outside the body. This test is done outside the body. That is, it's an in vitro test. So it will tell you how your platelet is functioning. Okay, now we are not no more using this bleeding time, because it's time, you need that time intensiveness and all. So we are using this platelet function assay. So what we do, we expose the blood to ADP. We expose the blood to ADP or epinephrine, and we let the platelet plug to form. Okay, we let the platelet plug to form. Do we remember from our basics of epinephrine and all? They're allowing us to form that platelet plug when we studied the structure of platelet plug, isn't it? So they are actually in the PFA 100, we are letting the blood to clot to form the, sorry, not clot, to make the platelet plug in the presence of epinephrine or ADP or CG. Okay, and there should be some diseases in which I should be having a prolonged BT. So I should know some diseases which are having increase the chance of BT. Okay. Now tell me one thing. If I tell you a word that my bleeding time has increased, what does it mean? If I say my bleeding time increases, that means, am I bleeding more or less? Very good. I'm bleeding more. That is, my plug is taking more time to set up. My plug is taking more time to close that thing. So can I say, if I have increased BT, the person is having a bleeding disorder, a person is hemorrhagic, a person is having more tendency to have hemorrhages. So so should we say some words which are letting us know that you have an increased BT? So once I am watching a blood test, I am watching an assay, PFA assay, and once I see 1 to 9 minutes should be normal, and if it is 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, I'm giving an example. So it should be an increased BT. For example, I gave you a best example, that is aspirin or NSAIDs, isn't it? You have NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. What are they doing is they are actually inhibiting the platelet cyclooxygenase. Once you are inhibiting the platelet cyclooxygenase, you will be having less amount of thromboxane A2 and you will have a platelet aggregation problem. So can I have a platelet aggregation problem in spite of a normal platelet count? Can I say this? In spite of a normal platelet count, can I have a platelet aggregation defect? I can have a platelet aggregation defect because I am taking aspirin. Aspirin is inhibiting the COX. COX is not producing what? Thromboxane A2. Thromboxane A2 is not produced, then I will have a platelet aggregation defect. You remember about that syndrome, Bernard-Celiac syndrome, Bernard-Celiac syndrome, Bernard-Celiac syndrome. Bernard-Celiac syndrome, I was having the deficiency of GP1B, isn't it? So once I have a deficiency of GP1B, attached with the VWF, von Willebrand factor, it will not attach to it. So I will have a platelet adhesion defect. I will have a platelet adhesion defect. My platelets will not be able to adhere with the von Willebrand factor, which is exposed, which has been exposed due to the endothelial injury. So what will happen in the end is, in the Bernard-Celiac syndrome, I will have a lifelong bleeding problem because this is a deficiency. It's a GP1B deficiency, and I will have a lifelong bleeding disorder. So next disease that we remember from our last discussions is Glanzmann's disease. Glanzmann's disease is also the same, where I will be having the increased bleeding time because I have a platelet aggregation defect. I have a platelet aggregation defect, and also I'm having it's not actually platelet adhesion. Sorry, it's a platelet aggregation defect. So you should use your words nicely. It's a difference between the aggregation and adhesion. Adhesion is the first step which is happening, and then aggregation happens, isn't it? It's from our basic hemostasis topic. So it's a platelet aggregation defect in the Glanzmann's disease, where I am having what absence of what? It is GP2B3A. GP2B3A receptors. Once I have a deficiency of GP2B3A fibrinogen receptors, I will not be having the aggregation. And we said Glanzmann's disease is autosomal recessive. It is autosomal recessive. And this disease also presents with deficiency of contractile protein. Can we know the contractile protein? Right now I discussed with you contractile protein. Contractile protein, that is thrombosthenin. So thrombosthenin is absent in Glanzmann's disease. Will the Glanzmann's disease patient have also the same lifelong problem? Will he be bleeding problem for his life? Will he be having the bleeding problem for his life? Yes, he will be having the bleeding problem for his life. Now tell me one thing. If I have a deficiency of vitamin C, the disease is called as scurvy. The disease is called as scurvy. And what is happening in the scurvy is I have a vascular defect. I am not able to cross-link the collagen. I am not able to have a very desired, very nice collagen. So what will happen is I will be having a vascular defects. So will the patient of scurvy present with bleeding gums? Will the patient of scurvy present with bleeding gums because my collagen is not there? Collagen is not nicely molded. You know about, I think you must know this, that once we are forming the collagen, in the process of collagen, there is a stage where there is occurring the cross-linking of tropocollagen molecules. So to cross-link these tropocollagen molecules, like if you want to cross-link something, if I cross my hands, then they are providing stability. If I cross something, they are providing stability, isn't it? But if I have a defective cross-linking, then my collagen will not be complying to what function it has to comply to. It won't be complying the functions. So what will happen is I will have bleeding problems. I will have hemarthrosis, isn't it? Hemarthrosis also. I will have hemarthrosis, that is bleeding in the joints. I will have ecchymosis. I will have ecchymosis. Okay. For example, so why are we discussing these diseases, just mentioning them under the physiology heading? Because we want to know where this platelet bleeding time is increased. So I would bleed more, so much time for me to form that platelet plug. And you can see if I check about this Bernard-Seria syndrome, I am again having a defect in the receptor. So again, a more bleeding is happening, and again, I'm not able to form that platelet plug. If I talk about Glanzmann's thrombasthenia, Glanzmann's disease, this is again having a GP2B3A fibrinogen receptor defect. So I will be having again a lifelong bleeding problem. If I talk about this scurvy, I have a vitamin C deficiency. So I will be having more bleeding gums. I will be having hemarthrosis. If I talk about, even in thrombocytopenia, also let us talk about the problem in platelet count. If I have a thrombocytopenia, in thrombocytopenia, I am having the decreased number of cells. I mentioned once the platelet count becomes less than 90,000 cells, once the platelet count becomes less than 90,000 cells, I will have an increasing bleeding tendency and an increased BT because I have less number of platelets. Are we able to understand? Or for example, we had von Willebrand disease, VWD, von Willebrand disease. What happens in von Willebrand disease is I have a platelet adhesion defect. I have a platelet adhesion defect. And what is happening is once I have an absent von Willebrand factor, and also it has been seen in the von Willebrand disease, I have deficiency of factor VIII. No, not deficiency, but decreased factor VIII. I have also decreased factor VIII. So I have a platelet disorder, also some sort of a thing, and also the coagulation factor disorder, isn't it? So von Willebrand disease is basically a dual disorder. I have a dual disorder. So one is a platelet disorder, platelet, and second I have a factor deficiency, a coagulation factor deficiency, that is factor VIII. In this case also I will be having a bleeding time, increase in that bleeding time. Or we just talked about the gray platelet syndrome. Gray platelet syndrome. In gray platelet syndrome, I am having deficiency of what granules? Alpha granules. That means I will be having less, the platelets will be pale, isn't it? And also in that case, I will be having a increased bleeding time. By the way, if I take my discussion, if I connect here something from the surgery, when we are doing a cardiopulmonary bypass surgery, what is happening in the cardiopulmonary bypass surgery is I am having more destruction of platelets. Okay, there will be some destruction of the platelets while we are in that bypass circuit, working in that bypass circuit. I will be having some destruction of platelets. Okay, and what we see once we see the patient post-operatively, that is after the operation, after we have finished that, at least there will be half the amount of drop in the platelet count. Platelet count will decrease. Okay, so but remember, we don't give a prophylactic platelet transfusion. You may think, sir, okay, sir, after surgery, post-operatively, I will be having a drop of platelets, platelet count, so I will be giving transfusing something. We are not, that books are not recommending that. So remember, in the cardiopulmonary bypass surgery, we also have some increased bleeding time. So I hope this is clear from this discussion, that which diseases can have an increased BT, and I have also given you the conceptual background why these are happening, why I will be having an increased BT. You don't need to remember them. You can yourself think of many things. Once you have a concept about how things are working, then you don't have to read, just have to read the headings, and then you remember every story about them, isn't it? The background. So this was about the second platelet test, that is BT. Now let me tell you about names of some tests which are used to evaluate the platelet aggregation function. So if I talk about the platelet aggregation test, the third test under the heading of platelet test, okay? So if I take that, that is the platelet aggregation test. So in the platelet aggregation test, is this, are you able to see my screen? Yeah, you are able to see my screen. Okay. So in the platelet aggregation test, it is basically a functional test. What we are doing, we are actually checking, is the platelet aggregation happening if I put an aggregant, if I put an aggregating agent. Can you tell me name of one antibiotic which is used as an aggregating agent? One antibiotic I recently mentioned while in the morning. Ristocetin. I have a ristocetin. A ristocetin is used as a aggregating agent. A ristocetin is used as an aggregating agent. Okay. Or I am using ADP. ADP is also an aggregating agent. Or I am using EPI. It's also an aggregating agent. So in the presence of these aggregating agents, I put them in the test tube and I check the platelet aggregation function. Okay. Then I should also have some tests for von Willebrand factor, because we said platelet will attach to the von Willebrand factor, isn't it? Platelet will attach to the von Willebrand factor. Okay. So we have a test that we should mention like this. RTCOA. We write it in short as ARCOA. ARCOA. What is ARCOA? It is RTC cofactor activity. RTC cofactor activity. Okay. And this, you just have to remember from this point that if someone is having a Bernard-Celiac disease, or if someone is having a VWD disease, this will show an abnormal. Okay. This will be abnormal in that. So remember, this is abnormal in, if I have a deficiency of von Willebrand factor, or if I have a Bernard-Celiac disease. Okay. I have another assay to test the von Willebrand factor, that is VWF antigen. VWF antigen assay. We call this as, in short form, VWFAG. VWFAG assay. This is a quantitative test. Von Willebrand factor antigen assay. This is a quantitative test. So in quantitative, we are checking the quantity of von Willebrand factor. We are checking the von Willebrand factor quantity in the serum. We are not checking the function. So what will happen if I have a von Willebrand disease, a classic von Willebrand disease, this will decrease or increase? Will the VWFAG increase or decrease? So yeah, answers from the students. Yeah, joining me, the students, Mancha, Basit, Supriya, Amara, Sad, Sharia. It will decrease. Okay, very nice answer. So it will decrease. The VWFAG assay will decrease. So this portion we have finished. The platelet tests, the platelet bleeding time, the platelet aggregation tests, the von Willebrand factor. Let us start with some coagulation tests. So talking about the coagulation tests, if you want to check whether your body is having, whether the patient is having a nice coagulation pathway, how is the coagulation pathway complying to what it is supposed to do or not? For that purpose, you should have the knowledge of coagulation pathways, which we have already read, and I hope you are clear with that. If you want me, we can have right now a 2 minutes rapid revision. So extrinsic pathway starts with which factor? Extrinsic pathway starts with which factor? The factor extrinsic pathway starts with your tissue factor, that is factor 7. And your intrinsic pathway, or the contact activation pathway, it starts with your factor 12. Both these factors, while getting sequentially activated, that is 12 to 12A, 12A to 9A, 9A to 12 to 12A, 11A, 12, 11 to 11A, 11A to 9A, and 9A to 10A. So finally they are coming to the common pathway that is at the 10. That is the common pathway coming at the 10. So your factor 7A is coming to the 10, and also your 10, 9A is also coming to the center, isn't it? We have already discussed that. And finally, we are having the activation of 10 to 10A, and we have then the form activation of 2 to 2A, and then activation of 1 to 1A, that is the fibrin monomers. And finally, you are making a, in presence of 13A and calcium, you are making a fibrin stabilizing plug, isn't it? So we have to right now discuss, we have discussed the normal physiology. Now we will say what is the defect, how we can say that we have a coagulation pathway defect, how we can say we have a coagulation pathway defect. So there should be some tests to check whether the coagulation pathway is happening or not. So the coagulation tests which we have is a prothrombin time, PT. PT is known as prothrombin time. Prothrombin time. In the prothrombin time, I am checking the extrinsic coagulation system. Please remember this point for your entrance examination. Prothrombin time checks the extrinsic coagulation system. So extrinsic is dash. Extrinsic means dash factor. You should remember like this. Beautiful answer. Extrinsic is 7. Tissue factor, remember. So in the extrinsic coagulation, prothrombin time is checked. We're checking in the prothrombin time, we're checking the coagulation system, that is the extrinsic coagulation system, till the formation of fibrin. So we are checking till the fibrin is formed. We are checking the whole system in the prothrombin time. So which factors will you be evaluating? You will be evaluating factor 7, factor 10, factor 5, factor 2, isn't it? You will be evaluating these factors. You will say, sir, where will you evaluate the fibrinogen? It is a different test. For fibrinogen factor 1, I have a different test. Okay. What is the normal value will be asked? What is the normal value for your PT? It is 11 to 12.5 seconds, we can say. We are putting the range 11 to 12.5 seconds. Okay. But don't say, sir, it is strictly 11 to 12.5. In some laboratories, in some clinical diagnostic centers, you may be seeing some different values, but yeah, the range will be given, and you have to compare the patient's range with the laboratory value range. As you have seen in the blood tests, that there is one there is a laboratory range, on the other side there is a patient's blood test value, isn't it? That PT value. Okay. So basically the idea behind the increased PT, if someone is having a increased PT, since this test is not a sensitive test, this test is not a sensitive test. It's not that it will be sensitive that a minor amount will come down. For example, if someone has 1 mg, if someone gets, for example, a 1 mg decrease of some hormone or something, you have some sensitive tests which can detect that, yeah, 1 mg has been decreased. Your PT will get changed, your PT will get prolonged only when you have at least 40% factor level. If your factor level has reached to 40% or 30%, then only you will see the increased PT. Okay, understood? Where are we using this PT, this prothrombin time? Warfarin therapy. Some patients are in warfarin therapy. We are giving warfarin, for example, if we have a patient who has recurrent thrombosis, patient is having thrombosis disease, thrombotic diseases, and we don't want the thrombus to form. So which enzyme was I inhibiting in warfarin pharmacology integration? It is dash enzyme. Yeah, fast. Warfarin inhibits which enzyme? Warfarin inhibits which enzyme? Epoxide reductase. That's a beautiful answer. So in the epoxide reductase, we are inhibiting so that we don't let the things to coagulate. We don't let the things to coagulate. So we are actually preventing the thrombosis. So if you are giving a patient a warfarin therapy, so to monitor whether my warfarin therapy, you have to monitor that person, isn't it? You have to monitor that person. Okay. So for monitoring, you are using a warfarin. For monitoring, you are using a PT. So PT is used for warfarin monitoring. Second use of PT can be written like this. Uh, you know, if you want to see whether someone is having his liver function, you have to check a liver function of someone. So what you will do, you will write a PT as an investigation. In the PT, you will check if the PT is increased or not. If PT is increased, it will tell me there is a liver disease, there is a liver dysfunction, there is a liver dysfunction or liver disease. For example, if someone is having hepatitis, a chronic hepatitis patient will show me an increased PT, isn't it? I will have an increased prothrombin time because my liver is dysfunctional. My liver is having dysfunction, so I will have an increased PT. Okay, or if I have a cirrhosis, of liver, I will have an increased PT. Okay, so what else can you do with the PT? What else can a PT tell you? PT can tell you if you have a factor 7 deficiency or not. Okay, okay. For example, I will be telling you another test, that is a APTT. APTT stands for activated partial thromboplastin type. So APTT, if someone's APTT is normal, you should check the PT. You should check the PT. Okay, for factor 7 deficiency. If someone is having a normal APTT, you can check the factor 7 deficiency. Okay, okay. So there is no doubt, I hope. So let us talk about another test. These were the uses. Let us talk about another test, that is APTT. What is APTT? The third coagulation check test, that is activated partial thromboplastin time. So activated partial thromboplastin time. Now see, who was evaluating the extrinsic coagulation? If you want to check the extrinsic system, PT, that's a beautiful answer. So who should evaluate the intrinsic system? APTT. So APTT evaluates, it will check your intrinsic system. Intrinsic system, APTT. Can I tell you a mnemonic how I remember? Where do you play the table tennis? Play table tennis. That's a famous mnemonic, I hope. Where do you play the table tennis? Inside or outside? Very nice. So table tennis, playing table tennis, table is inside. But if I write PT means play tennis. Tennis is played where? Tennis is placed where? Outside. That's a beautiful answer. So remember like this. You won't be confused in any time in the exam. So PT evaluates your which system? PT evaluates your outside. So play tennis is outside. I remember like this. That means extrinsic system. APTT, play table tennis, is inside. So inside means I play table tennis inside. That is the intrinsic coagulation system I will be testing with the APTT. I hope there is no problem. That is so simple and very nice and diligently explained. I hope so. I was in my MBBS having so much in my first year, having so many problems to remember. Then I quoted the mnemonics, and by that thing, I was able to save myself. Okay. So what is APTT actually evaluating? It will evaluate which factors then. If I am talking about APTT, that is I'm talking about intrinsic system. I am talking about the intrinsic system. So in the intrinsic system, I will be having the check of factors, factor 12, factor 11. Let me write in the Roman values so that you don't get confused in exam. So you have problems, factor 8 problems, factor 10 problems. What else can I think? Factor 5 problems, one should be a separate test. For one, I should be having a separate test. Okay, don't write one in this. So what is the normal APTT value? It is 30 to 40 seconds. And you know, it is not strictly that you have this 30 to 40 seconds. Yeah, in the various tests, in the various laboratories in abroad and here also, you can accordingly see the derangements, if any. So they say, what are your desired values as a physician? If you are treating someone, if you want a very nice anticoagulation, what should be the range? They tell you what should be the range. So the range should be 1.5 to 2.5 times the normal range. The range should be 1.5 to 2.5 times the normal range. Are we able to understand? That is equal to, if I multiply this quantity, it will be around 65 to 70 seconds, isn't it? It will be around, okay? Means what? What do you mean by what, sir? Sir, what do we mean by this? What you are saying? I mean, for example, if some patient is having a APTT value of less than 50 seconds, for example, if someone is having a APTT value of less than 50 seconds, or if patient is having a value of 45, 30 seconds, that means the patient is not having the drug. You have to give an anticoagulant, isn't it? You want to give anticoagulant therapy, heparin, for example, but you are not, he's still having less than 50 seconds. That means he's not receiving any heparin. That means you need to give more heparin to make the anticoagulants, isn't it? You have to give more heparin to give the therapeutic dose. Therapeutic means you are actually giving a therapy. Now, if I take an example, I have an APTT levels greater than 90 or greater than 100. What do we mean by this? It means I have given more heparin. It means I am giving more heparin, isn't it? That's why APTT has increased. Partial thromboplastin time has increased. So that means the patient will be having high risk of bleeding, high risk of hemorrhages. How to treat this patient? If you directly see, now let me teach you an antidote here. If you directly see that a person is having a high APTT levels, that means he has an heparin overdose. He has taken too much heparin than required. Or the doctor is prescribing a therapy in which heparin is getting increased. So what will happen is, you will have more amounts of bleeds. You will have more susceptibility to bleeds. You will be bleeding a lot. The patient will bleed a lot. So if you want to reverse this effect, directly prescribe at the same time, you can give what? You can give a protamine sulfate. A protamine sulfate can be given. To prevent this spontaneous risk if you are having a heparin, increased heparin. So can I say this PTT, tell me this PTT is a nice tool as being a physician to monitor my heparin anticoagulation therapy? Heparin anticoagulation therapy? Yes, it is a tool for me. It's a very nice tool, because what is heparin doing? We said in the previous lectures or previous discussions that if heparin is given, it is basically having what? It increases the antithrombin 3 activity, isn't it? It is increasing the antithrombin 3 activity. Once I have more antithrombin in the blood, that means I will have less formation of clots. I will have less formation of thrombosis. I will have less process of thrombosis. Okay. So remember, only we are using the APTT to monitor the heparin anticoagulation therapy. Okay. And it can tell me also the problems in my intrinsic coagulation system. Okay. So let us make a generalization below. Let us write a box. Please write a box like this. So the generalization is, if a patient is having heparin therapy, if patient is taking heparin or patient is on warfarin therapy, these both are anticoagulant therapy, isn't it? So in these cases, your PT will increase or not? Yes, your PT will increase. Your PTT will increase or not? Yes, your PTT will also increase. Because they are finally doing what? They are inhibiting that common pathway. Do you remember that common pathway? At the common pathway, both will inhibit everything. Okay. But if you tell me, sir, clinically as a doctor, which therapy, which test should I check for warfarin monitoring? I would say PT. PT for warfarin. PT for warfarin. And heparin PTT is okay. So if you want to have a very nice idea of warfarin therapy, go for PT. If you want to have very nice path, but both are coming, at the final common pathway, you are inhibiting these factors at the common pathway where there is a merging of extrinsic and intrinsic systems, finally you will be having an anticoagulant effect. But I am saying if I want individually check, become more sure about these things. So you can say for PT, you can check warfarin. For warfarin therapy, you can go for PT, and for heparin monitoring, you can check for PTT. Okay. So let us talk about some tests to check whether my fibrinolysis is happening very nicely or not. Okay. This is the most important content you have to remember for your clinical practice. Okay. So another thing I would say, what are some tests to check the fibrinolytic system? Tests to check the fibrinolytic system. So the tests which I will be using to check the fibrinolytic system is, that means if I have to do fibrinolysis, again we come to that point of, we come to that question that what is that? What was that question? The question is fibrinolysis. Who is actually doing the fibrinolysis? We forgot actually a one coagulation test. I think we forgot a one coagulation test. I'm sorry. The next coagulation test to be remembered is INR, which is important. So INR is important. INR is the important coagulation test. I forgot to tell you. I'm sorry. So INR means International Normalized Ratio. International Normalized Ratio. Okay. This INR tells me actually I'm using to monitor the warfarin. This is also used to monitor the warfarin anticoagulation therapy. Okay. What is your therapeutic INR range? What is the therapeutic INR range? The therapeutic INR range is 2 to 3.5. Mostly we do this. Okay. Okay. So remember, we are using INR to monitor the warfarin therapy. So our therapeutic range should be between 2 to 3.5. So you will be prescribing the patient to come after 10 days, to come after 15 days and check out your INR, writing him some tests. Okay. So yeah, now we come to the fibrinolysis, fibrinolytic tests, fibrinolysis. We said that fibrinolysis happens, we have to destroy those polymers, those plugs, so that fibrin mesh, so that we can restore the blood supply to that region. So which are the tests which I can use to check my fibrinolysis is happening? Or if I want to see in the body, for example, I am doing a fibrinolytic test and suddenly I see the fibrinolytic test is showing me a high range. It's in the higher range. So I would be thinking, yeah, in some place in my body, there is something is happening which is making the clot. And finally, the fibrinolysis is also happening. That should raise a concern for me, isn't it? So in the fibrinolysis tests, we are actually using the best test, the best, very nice test, that is the D dimer. We are checking the D dimer levels, the D dimer assays. The basic funda behind this is, do we remember from the previous discussion that where was the D dimers being formed? Where was it forming the D dimers? Can someone contribute? Yeah. Yes, my dears. Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. It was actually, being produced when I was destroying the fibrin mesh. When I destroy the fibrin, you had a fibrin, the plug which you had formed. And if you destroy this, if you are destroying this, if you want to dissolve this, you will produce D dimers. You will produce D dimers. So will the D dimer levels increase if I break it more? So if I break this fibrin threads, that my D dimers should increase. So I should indirectly check the D dimer levels. That will tell me whether my coagulation system, where is my fibrinolytic system? What is the status of my fibrinolytic system? Okay. So what we write for this is, it is actually to check the fibrin degradation products. It is helping me to check the fibrin degradation products. Okay. The D dimer assay, what we are checking is these cross-linked, monomers. So fibrin monomers are being checked in the D-dimers. Okay. Write one point in the bracket. It is highly sensitive. This test is highly sensitive test. Okay, but it is not specific. It is not that clotting is happening. This can be increased also. Please remember, this can be also increased in rheumatoid arthritis. It can be also increased in any sort of a liver dysfunction or a liver disease. It can also get increased in pregnancy. It can also get increased in any sort of a malignancy. Any malignancy can have, and so it is not specific, but it is sensitive. It is not so much specific that it will only be because of thrombosis or something. It can be also be increased in rheumatoid arthritis, or it can be increased in liver disease, or it can be increased in any inflammatory scenario happening in the body. It can be raised in that high range of values. So where are we using it clinically? D-dimer test. We write D-dimer test as investigation for mostly which conditions in the hospital, like DVT. What is DVT? Deep vein thrombosis. Deep vein thrombosis. And we are using the D-dimer in pulmonary thromboembolism. So if someone is having a thromboembolism going to the pulmonary circulation, so in case of a pulmonary thromboembolism, we are using this D-dimer test. Okay. Or if someone is having a DIC, what is DIC? Disseminated intravascular coagulation. Disseminated intravascular coagulation. So in the disseminated intravascular coagulation, we are using this D-dimer test. So remember 3 tests: DVT, PE, and DIC. DVT, PE, DIC. DVT, deep venous thrombosis. Okay. If I have a patient who is having, thrombosis, a coronary artery thrombosis, I give you an example. I have a patient who is having coronary artery thrombosis, and the thrombus has actually occluded the coronary circulation. Okay. For example, I had a LAD. LAD is anterior descending, isn't it? Anterior descending artery, isn't it? LAD. We have thrombosis, for example, in the LAD. Okay. This is one of the arteries supplying the heart, coming in the interventricular septum. So what is happening is this LAD, if it is thrombosed, that means I will give an thrombolytic therapy, alteplase, retiplase sort of a thing, isn't it? I will dissolve the thrombin clots. But can I give with it? Can I once I'm giving this thrombolytic therapy, can I go and check the patient's D-dimer levels? Because what will happen when I will dissolve this clot in this artery, it will get dissolved by my anticoagulant or antithrombolytic thrombolytic therapy. So once I am giving a thrombolytic therapy, that will dissolve the clot. So once I have dissolving the clot, my D-dimers will increase. So can I use it as a follow-up? Can I use this as a follow-up, checking every time the D-dimer levels? Or if a patient is having a stroke, and patient is having a focal neurological deficit, I will be checking the D-dimer levels. Or someone is having a renal artery stenosis. If someone is having a renal artery stenosis, I can use a D-dimer level. So these are the fibrinolytic tests which we can use. We also have some, some important tests which we'll be reading in your medicine part, but this lecture was all about the basics of physiology, and I integrated with it with some tests so that you could have a good hand how the coagulation systems are working and how we are investigating them, how we are checking these coagulation systems. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Press the subscribe button, the red button below, which you are really aware of. And thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye bye.